Dziękuję, or dzień dobry. Trying to speak a little bit of Polish there. If y'all haven't heard from us talking up here already, my name is David Swanson, and this is Jordan Wright. We are both students from the United States, and we go to James Madison University. Today we're going to be talking to you about accessible technology in string education, and a little device that I've crafted up here and what you can expect to see maybe in the next 10 years of music education and accessibility regarding that. So I'll go back to this slide for a little bit. So we already told you that we're both from JMU. I am actually not a music education major. I am a music industry major. If you're not familiar with that program, it's a little bit unique to JMU. That can encompass a huge variety of things. That can be business, that can be recording, that can be repairing instruments, that can be all kinds of stuff. But what makes me a little bit different is I'm also an apprentice luthier at J.R. Judd Violins in Williamsport, Pennsylvania. And Jordan Wright here is a music ed major.
Yeah, I'm a music major at James Madison University. I study in the United States, even though my accent says otherwise. And then we know each other because we're in the same studio, and we thought this project, because I love research and he loves technology, we thought we'd create a presentation about it.
Yeah. So moving on, we did have a couple of sponsors to help get us here. We are a couple poor college students, and these three sponsors did help us get here. BVS is Buffalo Valley Singers. They are located in Lewisburg, Pennsylvania. I sang with them for a couple of years, and they gave a generous gift to help us get here. God Strings is a company located in Harrisonburg, Virginia. That's where JMU is, and they basically hire out musicians for weddings and special events. And if you're ever in Virginia and you need some musicians for whatever, they're a great company. And the last one is Robert M. Sides, who very generously donated this viola, which we've been able to experiment on without concern about hurting an actual instrument. Not that this isn't an actual instrument, but yeah. So let's talk today about what we're going to be talking about today. So we're going to talk about what our mission is and why we have this mission. Why are we actually here today? We're going to talk about the history of special music education. That's what SME is, and ASI referring to accessible string instruments. We're going to be talking about what that looks like today and what that might look like tomorrow. And then we're going to talk about this specific advice and what you can expect from it and its future potential. So what's our mission? Our mission is to one day see every person with a disability be able to play Cotton Eye Joe on the violin. No, that's not really it. It's really, the mission is to eventually be able to allow any person with a diagnosis or disability to play the instrument of their choice. We'll go into why later. But first, story time. When I was getting ready to get on the flight to come to Pozdon, Ben and I, we went to a Zaxby's in Virginia, and there was this really beautiful family that walked in, and I noticed right away, my target group is Down syndrome, people with Down syndrome, and we'll go into why later, but this young girl and her family walked in. She was probably about 4 or 5 years old, and she came in. Things were obviously crazy for the family. It always is when you got little kids around, and she had a little brother who was probably about 9 months old. And they sat, the baby in the chair, she's sitting in the booth, things are getting loud, stimuli everywhere, and you could tell that the baby was getting upset because he started to cry and fuss. And one really beautiful thing was this 4-year-old with Down syndrome went over to her brother and just went a very familiar melody, baby shark doo 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 doo, baby shark doo doo. And the baby just started to calm down because his sister was there singing with him. So that was just a really encouraging story because people with a diagnosis often are thought of as not being able to have a real purpose. And that really bugs me and bugs a lot of people because just that small example proves that everyone has a purpose, no matter if they have a diagnosis or not. And I thought that was really special as I was just about to get on a flight to get here. So this is my mission because in high school, another quick story, I'll try to make it a quick little anecdote. I had a friend with Down syndrome. Her name was Katie, and one thing that made Katie really special is she loved music. Music was one of her favorite things, and you could tell she was always singing. Favorite show was The Little Mermaid, always singing Part of Your World, and it was really great of our high school because even though she had trouble staying on pitch and in rhythm, they let her be part of our musical. And we ended up going to prom together. It was just so much fun. And it was amazing how you can craft a friendship with no boundaries because of something like music. Additionally, we had a student teacher come in who had just been trained on teaching special learners music. And it was like a miracle to watch Ms. Barris take Katie aside for 30 minutes and just teach her the music to the show, because she started singing in pitch and in rhythm, and that really inspired me to get into special music education. Even though that's not my program, that's still something I research very heavily, so that's the why behind we're doing this project and why we're doing this kind of research.
So benefits of music education, a lot of us know what the benefits. So music works both sides of the brain, so left side for logic, language, maths, right side for expression, creativity, imagination. Music also helps with leadership, teamwork, builds relationships. This is great for normal students who do not have any disabilities, but it's also amazing for those who have disabilities because it really helps them develop cognitively.
So one question that comes up a lot for this project is, isn't this just basically music therapy? Having an individual with a special need participate in music, what's the difference between music education and music therapy? Well, it's about their goals. Music therapy has the goal of improving life and emotional state, whereas music education has a goal of improving not only emotional state, because we know that when you play music, it can improve your emotional state, but it also improves a cognitive state when you are actively participating in that music. So that's why we believe that music education should be accessible, because of all those benefits for someone with a cognitive or physical disability. So I took a class this past year called Music Technologies, and my professor, Jesse Rathgeber, put this narrative up. I changed it just a little bit. It was originally a band-centered narrative, but today we're going to focus it on strings. And this, I would just like to read this aloud to you really quick, and imagine the situation. Tommy is so excited to visit his school's instrument introduction night. There are several to choose from. He could either join the school's band or the school's orchestra, but he's already made his choice. He loves the sound of the string family and hopes to one day be able to play the Walton Concerto. Tommy's only problem is that he was born with only half of his right arm. However, he still has his right hand, but without a fully functioning elbow. When he picks up the viola and the bow from the stand on display, Tommy looks to his teacher to make it able to be played by him. What would you do? We're not going to answer that quite yet, but I would like you to be thinking about that throughout the presentation. So let's define accessibility. This is a word that's used all the time. It's even on our iPhones now to go into the accessibility settings. What does that quite mean? Well, we decided that a better word would be accommodative, because accommodative means that you can change something to better fit someone's needs. Dr. Alice Hamill, a professor from James Madison University, came up with this idea of the label-free approach. So, instead of categorizing people by their diagnosis, we should be categorizing them by the obstacles that their diagnosis produces. For instance, maybe a student has a behavioral problem. The why might be severe autism, or maybe it could be Down syndrome potentially. But instead of saying this student has Down syndrome, this is what we should do, no disabilities are the same. So rather, let's identify the obstacles of their learning and then accommodate to that. One example of this is the purple folder method. method. I really like this method if you've ever taught in a school. That would be maybe a student is getting a little bit rowdy, maybe they need to take a break. Have an empty purple folder and ask, Tommy, could you take my purple folder to Miss Jordan? It has something in there that she needs. It just gives the student a chance to exit the classroom. But that's, and come back, and it also gives them a job without having to say, go to the principal's office or go to the guidance counselor. So that's just one really good example of accommodating your classroom to a student's needs without having to label them or without having to make them feel excluded.
So as you all know, once you have chosen a topic you'd like to do a presentation on, you always do background research around it. However, special music education is in the United States fairly a recent topic and a recent source of discussion, so there's really not that much information about it. ASTA is the American String Teachers Association, and they have an amazing database that is available to members, so I immediately went there and looked up a couple keywords, so special education, adaptability, and nothing came up. I then went to the National Association for Music Educators, or NAFME, and looked at their database, and only 4 entries came up, and they weren't exactly specific. They just contained those keywords. So there's really not that much information in the United States about special music education and adaptability. And then accessible instrument development is starting to happen privately in certain companies around the world. We're focusing on a couple in this presentation, all from London, but so far nothing has traveled to the United States, and we would like to try and change that. So, can I have thank you. So I would like you to take a look at some of the next photographs. I'm going to leave them on the slide for a little bit, and I would like you to think about the benefits and the consequences of the following. So what do all these instruments have in common? What's the good things about them? What's the bad things about them? Some more? So I'm just going to write this slide. So some of the benefits, well, what they all have in common is that most of them are touch-based, a lot of keyboard kind of instruments. A lot of them only have maybe a couple notes, maybe a pentatonic scale at most. They're all very colorful, easy to use. Those are some of the benefits. Anyone can use them, anyone can touch them. However, some of the consequences is that because they look like toys, they are very otherizing. And if you're using them in a classroom, if you're having students play, for example, string instruments, and then you're having a child with a disability playing, for example, my first saxophone, it's otherizing. It kind of takes them out of the group. It makes them different. Also, if you notice, for the prices, for example, $49 for a saxophone, something very expensive. For a 3-button instrument, $108. For a 1-button instrument, $182. So just very expensive. For these bells, $249 US. So very, very expensive. So why is price a problem? Traditional instruments, as you know, are very expensive. So why are any of these a problem? Well, traditional instruments have a range of notes. Very, very wide ranges. These instruments, like I said, most of them are just pentatonic, do not have that much variety, so you cannot use them in ensemble playings. And we're already asking parents of those who have special needs to pay so much for their child's education. So it's not very fair to ask them to say, hey, can you buy this bell for $300 that we might use occasionally in the music classroom? It's just not very fair. So we would like to try and change price point and another thing. So something that has been developed is an item called the Scoob. It's right here. It's this little black cube. It's got 5 buttons on the side. It was developed from research from the University of Edinburgh, which was funded by the National Endowment for Science, Technology and the Arts, otherwise known as NESTA. Edinburgh took all this information from this research that they have schools, and they developed this, and that was commercialized by Scoob Music under Apple. It's pentatonic, very easy to use. It doesn't look so much like a toy, it's very sleek. It's very sleek, anyone can use it, doesn't look like a toy. It's also programmable, so you can use different things for it. So it doesn't have to be just the pentatonic scale, it can be other notes. Any child can use it. If you have a child who's interested in coding, it's a very good instrument, thing to play with. However, some of the cons, it still doesn't look like a traditional instrument. Biggest problem is the price. It's almost $200 for a 5-button instrument, and it's not used for ensemble playing. You can't really ask a school system to say, hey, can we have 30 of these $200 cubes that only play 5 notes? So we're getting there with accessible technology, but we're still not quite there.
So I'm going to talk to y'all a little bit about a real life person who has a disability but has made her life in music. This is Galen Lee. She's a very accomplished musician. In fact, she, with her violin and with her voice, she has been on NPR. She has been on the Tiny Desk contest, which is primarily American, but it's a big deal in America if you get your music on the Tiny Desk contest. She has a congenital disability, osteogenesis imperfecta. Nailed that pronunciation. That basically meant that all of her bones broke when she was in the womb. So she was born with quite a few of her bones not functioning properly. And one quote from her interview on NPR was, when you have a disability, you spend every day adapting what you do. She expressed how it's not just music, literally everything you have to adapt when you have a disability this severe. And we're going to play you a quick clip of her music that's been published. So, I'm going to emphasize something here. You don't have to make anything. You just have to find a way around it. Did anyone see in this video that she had anything special here? There's this device here, but that's just a looping pedal. Anyone can have a looping pedal. And she's just playing it in a different style. So this might seem a little bit ironic that we are telling you that you don't have to make anything. That's because our goal is not to sell a product, it's to further education. So, and also, you can't quite see it, but if you roll the video back, you can see that she is wearing a wedding ring, so congratulations to her, she got married. So, good for you, Galen Lee. So yeah. Next we're going to talk about the Telecaster. The Telecaster was the first accessible instrument that I had learned about in classes. This is John Kelly. This is him right here. You can see that he also has a visibly noticeable disability, but he uses this system here to allow him to play the guitar. He is also a successful professional musician, even with his disabilities. And you can see the credits up here for who helped him make this product. And we're going to play a clip of his music.
There's a promise of hope on the way. There's a glory to come when the day has won. We're caught in the wind chain. I suppose I've had the idea in my head pretty much all my life, actually, and that's, I've always liked to play guitar. I've always liked guitar oriented music. I've been a bit of a punk, a bit of a scarhead, a bit of a rocker. Very, very.
Yeah. So, did you hear what he just said there? he's always wanted to play guitar. He didn't say he always wanted to be a musician. He wants guitar. Also relating to our goal of allowing anyone with a disability to be able to play the instrument of their choice.
A company in the UK that also knows John Taylor is a company called Human Instruments, based in London. It's a father and son team of developers, and they both love music all their life. It runs in their family, and they wanted to develop instruments that anyone could play, or a certain disabilities could play. So this is what they say about Human Instruments. Human Instruments is an organization which researches, designs, and develops high-quality instruments, musical instruments, for people with physical disabilities. Society has created barriers for disabled people to receive an education or build a profession in music. So that is something that they were trying to help with. So they use technologies such as Ableton, which is a music software that anyone can use. And then they also use a MIDI keyboard, which is here on the right. I'm about to show a video on it, but how it works is this side, you can choose which chord to play. So there's major, minor, augmented, diminished. And then here you have the notes themselves, just a normal keyboard. So C, C sharp, D, D sharp, so on and so forth. So here is
Yeah, there you go.
So before I play this, this is one of their creations called High Note. This man used to be a professional trumpet player, however you want to call it. However, he got into a car accident and could not use anything below his shoulders, completely disabled. So Human Instruments developed an instrument for him to play in ensembles. He's playing this in an ensemble right now called the Para Orchestra in London. Up here on his head, it's a small device which tracks where he's looking. And then down here, this tube allows him to play the instrument with his breath. So the breath pressure helps with the dynamics and helps with articulation, which you will see.
That's interesting because what I'm trying to do there is play the same volume, which is trying to hit.
Another device that they created, as I just said, called Touch Chord.
We've been testing this instrument with different musicians to see what they think.
But this interface is arranged in a very different way than traditional instruments. A lot of MIDI controllers that you'll use are basically just keyboards or pianos. But the way they're laid out, is this whole other language of sensitivity and touch, I guess, and texture. I think it's a really interesting way of composing or coming up with chord shapes and unfamiliar way. I've often thought a long time of trying to liberate the MIDI controller from the keyboard form to trigger sounds in performance or for composition. So it's a cool way of doing that, and it seems to open those possibilities.
So with this instrument, you do not need all your fingers. Like with the Telecaster, he only has the ability to use a couple of his fingers, so you just need to press the keyboard controller that you want. So let's have that one.
Yeah, so the creators of the Telecaster also come from another company. Human Instruments, the company we just talked about, and Drake Music are associated. And Drake Music, we are in communication with them. They are interested in what we have to show them. So we might be seeing some influence from the Telecaster affect our device here. And one thing I'm just going to add about that video that we just watched was the music in the background of the video was made with that instrument. So Yeah, so let's talk about some examples of special music education in action. In the United States, in New York, the New York Philharmonic, the conductor, Jaap van Sweden, had his third son has severe autism. And they were told that his son was never going to be able to speak. But one day, they forgot the words to his favorite song. And their son started to get really, really upset, and they're like, why is he getting so upset? Because they just continued to sing the melody. So why does that matter? They realized that he was recognizing the words. So through special music education, they just sang with him at home. Their son was able to learn how to speak. And that's an example of special music education in action. So what might tomorrow's special music education look like? Well, the answer is we don't know. We really think that there could be amazing improvement maybe in the next 5 to 10 years with examples like the Telecaster and our device here. It's becoming much more popular to make these instruments accessible for people. And I think we're going to see, instead of those toys, we're going to see genuine instruments crafted and adapted for people with special needs. And we have one question, is why not? We have the technology here to do this. In fact, everything that you see on this table here, this viola was free to me. We talked about Robert Inside supporting that earlier. This Makey, $50 US, which is about 150, give or take, zloty. And yeah, we're all using zloty this week, right? But this was only $50, and we're actually, well, we'll talk on this later, we're looking to replace this device with something that costs $20. So all of this technology can be skip one night out to eat, and you can make your technology or your instrument accessible for someone, or their instrument accessible for themselves. So this is what I'm talking about. This is called a Makey. I actually brought the entire kit today. These are crafted in Japan. Lots of wires, a computer chip, and there's some stickers in there too if anyone really wants them. But basically what this is I can pass this around. It's just the arrows on your keyboard, up, down, left, and right, and then a space and a click. This is completely programmable, and we'll talk about what we use to program it. Very easy to use. There's some really cool videos out there if anyone's curious. People have made instruments out of watermelon. They have made instruments out of balloons. It's really fun because you can use it as a toy or as a tool. The only thing about this is real chunky. This thing is huge. And we actually just crafted a way that we are going to attach it to here, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. This was the original case for it. I'm gonna give y'all some free advice. When you 3D print something, don't leave it in a hot car for 2 hours. This was a rectangle, and it is no longer a rectangle. But I'll pass that around. But you can see, like, the holes we crafted. This was something I just 3D printed at our university. It's not really any use to us anymore, but this was its original case that would attach to the, in between the shoulder rest and the back of the instrument. We're looking to replace it with one of these, and I know I made the image a lot bigger. This is not to scale. A teensy is about this big, as opposed to, my fingers don't stretch that far, like that big. So a teensy can do everything the Makey can do, and it can actually save software, or rather, it doesn't need as much help as the Makey does, and it's cheaper. Smaller, cheaper, can do more. We're going to replace it very soon. I am in communication with the engineering professor at James Madison University, and we're going to start exploring some different options with how we can improve this device. The programming. So this was actually a really fun step for me because I know very little about code, but yet I was able to figure this out with some help from a professor and another student. This is Scratch. Scratch is an online coding platform made by MIT, and it's really fun and easy to use. You can see there's all these different colors, all these different options that you can make, and this really did not take me long to figure out. So, because it works very logically, and plus it's really cute. As you can see, there's a cat cat right there. So it's fun to use. And we'll show a little bit about how that programming works here in a minute. Let's talk about the current abilities of this device. For this, I'm actually going to disconnect the slideshow for a minute because of the way the technology here works. I have to use this computer. So if you'll give me just a moment. So, the current abilities of this device include playing all the open strings. So a student would really be ready for 4th grade in the United States, in most places. It's all connected here behind the bridge so that you don't have to interfere with the playing area. And all you have to do is touch the string to create the bow sound. So, can you demonstrate? Yep. Well,
The G's.
there we go. All right, great. So that's the current abilities of it. It's really in its prototype stages still, but as of right now, a student could hold that up and just tap the device behind their arm and use it to play any open string. So we're gonna reconnect here for a second. And I'm gonna show you all the coding platform within this. So you can see it a lot better now here. This looks like a bunch of complicated coding. That's actually not. I'll close this because this has nothing to do with that. This is only 9 blocks of code. And currently we're trying to make it to able to do pizzicato as well when certain inputs are put in. But basically, the takeaway from all this is all you need to do to use the bow is touch the string. And we all know as violists that the bow can be a lot more complicated than the left hand. Or if someone doesn't have a right elbow, which is an actual case that happens, and has happened, I've seen it, the student can just touch the string and create the bow sound.
And like we said, can play in an ensemble. It's a traditional instrument with just like a few modifications, so students feel like they are a part of the group, a part of the ensemble, which is really what we want. Teamwork, friendships, a little bit of normalcy in their lives.
Exactly. Our future goals include allowing it to use pizzicato, additionally changing the pitch on the instrument. We have a way we want to do that, but we're going to wait until we get funding from our school to be able to purchase the parts that we need to allow it to change pitch as you go up the string. Additionally, we're looking to, instead of having this be loose or in a case like that and then behind the viola, or any string instrument, I think we forgot to emphasize that this can be used for any string instrument, really. We chose the viola, not only are we violists, but the viola is different. It's a chameleon. It can be a violin, it can be a cello, it can be anything you really want it to be. And yeah, and the viola being so different, I think we can all kind of attest that the reason we chose the viola has a lot to do with ourselves. A lot of us probably feel very different. You may not think you are, but we all have a very special purpose, and that's probably a reason that you came to choose the viola. And I know that's why I love the viola so much, is because it can be whatever I want it to be, whenever I want it to be. So we're looking to attach it behind the bridge, and then when the TC comes in, to have it attached almost like a mute. That way none of this wire is exposed here. Currently what we've been doing is putting a cloth over here so nobody bumps their face, but that has not really been a problem. It's more of a precaution.
And so that the piece of, the student doesn't have to buy an instrument, and the piece of technology you can use with any instrument. So really, let's say the school already has school instruments there. All the student needs to do, or the school needs to do, is buy this piece of technology that is very cheap. And then once the student would like to play, just attach the attachment onto the lower strings, and that's what they need to do.
Absolutely. Yeah, so we're just going to give a little bit of credit to our overseers This is Dr. Jesse Rathgeber. He is the professor of music technology who actually, that one of the first slides you saw, the Let's Play Pretend, remember Tommy? We'll come back to Tommy here in a moment. He is the one who inspired this idea. Dr. Diane Phoenix-Neal, who's right over here, is our professor of viola, and she's here with us today. And then Dr. Alice Hamill. If you're curious about this stuff, please follow your curiosity. Dr. Alice Hamill is a lead researcher on special music education and has written several works regarding special music education, and she invites you to email her. So if you want to take a picture, I know it's a little bit small. I'll invite you to come up and take a picture later, or if you want to go ahead and do that now, that's fine. She would love to talk to you if you have any ideas, or if you just want to chat. She also loves having friends on Facebook. So find her on Facebook. Great platform for networking, right? Additionally, I'm sorry, I went too fast. Dr. Jesse Rathgeber invites you to email him as well.
If you have any questions about music technology, the technology we use today, any of that kind of stuff, if you would like help implementing any of that into your teaching, or if you have any ideas about how to, he's a great resource to use.
He is also an SME researcher, a special music education researcher, and he leads one of the programs at our university that I'm a part of called the Center for Inclusive Music Engagement. This is the kind of stuff we do through that center. So he's a great resource to use. Also uses a lot of Facebook. He's really great. And Dr. Phoenix is here as well if you would like to talk to her. So I invite you to also contact me. I love Facebook, I love Instagram. This is my digital business card. Don't worry, I can't teach any of y'all a lesson. You're all better than me when it comes to teaching viola. But I do invite you to take a picture of this business card. It has my phone number and my email address. If you have any questions or ideas, I especially encourage ideas or critique, because that's how we grow, right? We grow through our critique. And lastly, we're going to back it up a little bit. Ooh, we get motion sickness. All right. Let's talk about this again. So remember Tommy? Tommy doesn't have his a functioning right elbow and needs his viola to be adapted. Does anyone have any questions or comments or ideas? Literally, this is a safe space. You can say anything you want. If it's wrong, who cares? That's how we learn, right?
So we're asking, what would you do? Looking at all the technology they've seen today, the Telecaster, the high note, using the Makey, any of that kind of stuff, what would you suggest for someone like Tommy? So does anyone have any ideas? No wrong answers?
Okay. Yeah, so I do encourage y'all to maybe just ponder that for a couple of minutes, because you might come across this. Not all of us are school teachers, but the reason we decided to come here today is, like, as a musician, you are most likely going to be teaching some lessons at some point, or have taught some lessons, or know someone who teaches lessons, or you know someone with a disability that you would love to see through music. Music is really a service, and I think we can all agree upon that, especially the string family, and being able to use music as a medium to do good for other people. So that's why this project is so important to us, is because we take what we know and make it good for someone else. So, as we conclude today, I would like to invite you, maybe you want to come check this out, try it, have any critique for it, that's also great. And just explore what we've got up here on the table, and if you've got any questions or want to chat, I think we're done a little early. So I would like to thank you guys for coming today, and thank you for having us here in Potsdam, Poland at the International Viola Congress. Thank you.
Now you mentioned that Tommy does not have a right elbow. Do we presume from that he is fully functional in the left shoulder to the left arm?
Yes.
So it would appear, never assume anything, but it would appear that touching the bow would transfer a bow sound, and he could hold the instrument and finger it. That's probably technology that you are still trying to develop. But my question is, if you had a bow and you could touch the bow and maybe have some kind of a minor motion on it, how would you get arpeggios, how would you get double stops, how would you get accents, and get that type of response?
Well, one of the features that is in the human instruments is the use of breath. So they're using breath pressure to create accents, to create articulations. So if you breathe in a certain way, like that creates staccato or accents.
This would be a combination of touching the bow and possibly a breath pressure.
Yeah, it could be anything like that. That's something that we're trying to experiment in now, is using possibly breath if you only have up to here. Using breath, using your hand just to create different sounds, maybe legato, staccato, dynamics.
Absolutely. Another thing you could note is you'll notice there's 4 arrows, up, down, left, right. There's also these 2 buttons which switch the function of the makey-makey. So really, when this is being touched, it's telling the viola, or rather, the viola is therefore telling the computer, up arrow, down arrow, left, right. And if you go over to the computer, I can't disconnect this right now, but I will here in a moment. If you press up arrow or any of the arrows, it makes the sound. That's how the computer is programmed. So the viola is telling the computer what to do. It's not the viola making the sound, obviously. But these 2 buttons right here switch the function. So what you're talking about might be a combination. Maybe if you press both at the same time, that'll create tremolo. Or maybe if you press click, it might create accent. Or if you press space, maybe it's sustained. That's one of the future goals that we're working on right now, is how to create detailed and a bowed sound. So we might be seeing that here in a couple of months as we continue to develop this device. Did that answer your question?
Oh yes, very, very well. And you certainly have your work cut out for you. For instance, if you do a very complicated rococo trill with a turn, that would,
I don't think I can even do that.
Well, yeah, you can program just about anything these days. So I suppose the trick would be knowing where that is stored and how to access it and use it.
Yeah.
So long as they have a computer around, preferably a Mac. I'm a Mac fan, but there's actually some reasons behind that I'm not going to go into now. They should be able to do anything. Yeah, you like Mac? You do?
Yeah.
Okay, good. I was like, good for you.
Not everybody does.
Not everybody does, but yeah. So there's also the expense of the computer, but most districts in the United States have a computer or have access to a computer. Yeah. Does anyone else have any comments, questions? If anyone would like to come up here and just touch it real quick, that's also fine. Otherwise, one more.
Just want to say, like, really appreciate what you guys are doing, because I have because I have a pair of twins, so their parents will come to me and say, oh, you play music or you teach music, is that do you teach disabled children? And I just don't know what to do, because I do education a bit, but never touch the special needs. So this really just open another room.
Exactly. We're trying to start a conversation.
Future possibilities. So really appreciate.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Starting a conversation and starting ideas. So maybe everyone has an idea, and maybe you'll go to talk to someone about the idea, and maybe they'll say, oh, well, I know someone who can engineer or do this. So it just creates connections, and those connections might create solutions and inclusivity, and that's what we're really trying to start.
Yes.
Additionally, if you would like this slideshow to share with your friends or any of that, social media is also a great tool just to share ideas. You might send me an email, and I'll be happy to email this slideshow to you. Maybe you won't give an hour lecture on it, but maybe you'll spend 5 minutes just to look at those videos again, and if you forget their names or any of that, I'd be happy.
Research the companies, Human Instruments, Drake Music, both amazing companies, or research the musicians themselves, Galen Lee, John Kelly, both amazing. Human Instruments also has something called a haptic baton, where it's a baton that's connected to the conductor's arm, and then those who are blind have sensors on their legs, and they can feel the direction that the conductor is going. So even blind musicians can now play in an orchestra because they can feel where the beats are, where the tempo is. So lots of different things.
Several different things. This is just the tip of the
Just the
iceberg.
beginning.
But
Yeah.
I think that's what we've had for you. Thank you for your attention today. And anyone? So just make sure she's So I should see this part. I'm not sure what happened to the G just now, but you can give it a shot.
And you can even hold two at the same time. That's something we're trying to
Pretty amazing. Learning about new technology. I can imagine playing a duet now with a special needs student. Yes.
The only thing I was considering is
Thinking about these things. Yes. Yes. This is true. Yeah.
if you're going to be alone or you be projecting, you might want to rethink sizing a little more show so that
trying to
Teaching the student, and then you could play the duet with them. Like, if you're talking with them, play that first, just touching.
Why you've got to maybe the children, a little bit less clunky.
Right.
Yeah. We're not engineering students. This is just.
I do. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah.
Yes. There's still a lot.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
That's going to be the forefront of
I think the goal was on the program that she was doing.
Right now, I teach only in the university level, only in the superior level. Right now.
Oh no, that's
None.
it's like cable quality.
But I can imagine, like Chief said, someone asking me, because I know people with disabled children asking me if I could teach my child privately. So I can imagine now with something like this, suggesting to the parents, yes, but you know, with this instrument, we could start with that. So now I would have an idea of what to students. Yes, opens my mind to private teaching.
Because we're not selling anything. We're just I need to go back to my
Private
email.
teaching, and then also encouraging, so teachers have to teach both disability, disabled and non-disabled students in music class, often in public school settings. So it's encouraging to know about, so that I can tell my university students, hey, if you have this situation in the classroom after you graduate, here's what you Oh, there's an next.
Yes, we have to actually publish a piece on this. It's coming out, I think, next week.
There's ever,
And there's teaching notes and practice lab. And we'll be sure to share that throughout Facebook.
That's what we want.
I think they have an international association. Yeah, and they have international courses. I think music ed does, music education, but not strings.
But the device itself.
No, I've been invited to different countries' string associations.
Thank you. I appreciate you coming today.